Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. I don't know where that came from. Good morning, everyone. I hope. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. Appreciate you being back this Monday morning at 8:00. We've got some business to do today, and I'd like to ask Representative Hull to start us off with a prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, this thank for this day, Lord. Thank for all the great things you do, Lord. Just lead, guide, and direct us in every way. Be with us as we're up here this week doing the people's business. And please be with our families as we are away to see them toward the end of the week. And Lord, just thank you again for all the things you do. Just keep us safe, keep our minds straight, and allow us to hear you in our hearts. In your name I pray. Amen.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to remind everyone we have our annual House, Senate, legislative dinner tonight. Peanut Commission gives their annual report to the committees, and also feeds us dinner. So if you've given us Kimberly, let you know you're going to be there, or if not, let her know today. And come on, spouses are invited as well. We'll get right to the business. Representative Rhodes brings us HB 449. I want to apologize to the author. We ran out of time last week. You know, our committee times are very limited, and the rooms are even more so. So thank you for coming back this morning with HB 449. And I want to remind the committee, I think several on this committee were maybe a part of your study committee. I know I was. Very detailed. I think we had 3 meetings across the state. A lot of folks and interested parties testified at that, and I just want to appreciate your hard work and a lot of hours put in on that study committee. And this bill is a result of that study committee and a lot of compromise, I think, and detours and other ways to get there. And so thank you for coming back. Thank you for bringing this bill, and I'll turn it over to you. Chairman Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on there? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After that, I think we can take a vote, can't we? But thank you to the members of the committee and Chairman for having me here this morning. I'm not going to go into the full detail that we did the other day as far as the introduction of the bill, but I just want to run through, just remind everybody a few quick highlights, and then really kind of leave some more time for some questions if some of you have some concerns. You know, just again, I am huge pro-business, but we're not talking about tennis shoes, cars, or baseball bats here. We're talking about water, and we've got to have food, air, and water to live. And I just want to make it clear again that I truly believe and want private water companies to make more money than a municipality. And just for some of the members that weren't here the other day, this bill deals with private water companies. Private water companies are privately owned. They're not have no oversight, have nobody to tell them when, who, what, when, where to do, to regulate, to price. We're one of 5 states that do not regulate private water companies. One thing I do want to mention, Mr. Chairman, is I don't think we talked about this the other day, but there will be a budget requirement for the PSC, and we've had numerous meetings with them and with our approach people, and we're talking about $750 to $1.2 million would be the budget need that we would need for this program. Other than that, if y'all want me to go into more detail, I will, but I kind of wanted to just be here to answer some questions, and I know if y'all have some questions on the budget or the PSC side, we've got these gentlemen here behind us that can answer those questions.
Okay. Chairman is open to questions. Any questions or comments about the bill? I think it's pretty straightforward. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I read through the bill, this would affect my community also, where I live up in the mountains. And when you look at, don't you feel that the 15% that you've got in here, I think it's changed over time, and it's now is fair and allow any system to maintain a safe water system, the maintenance of it that goes on. Is that what you found?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. It's very fair, and you're right. It has been a compromise. Basically, another thing we did to protect private money, private business in this is we took out capital expenditures from being in hookup tap fees. I really didn't want to, but we did as a compromise to private business. We took the hookup fees and capital expenditures out of the equation, so I feel very good that the 15% increase is very fair. And if they justify it, it's justified.
Sure. If I can, Mr. Chairman. And so the PSC, from the way I understand this, will be the oversight. If it needs to be more or whatever, they're going to be the oversight for the charge. And then community members, if they're pushing back, can go to the PSC meeting, make their case, just as the water system can make their case.
That's exactly right. They'll have a hearing or a rate case just like we do with Georgia Power and some of our other entities. That will be a forum and a place for people to go state their case, their side, their position, and then let the PSC make a ruling on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the name of our committee is also, besides agriculture, is consumer affairs. I think this is a very consumer-friendly, positive bill for those of us that have these type of water systems in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got several more questions. Chairman Darlene Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I read through the bill and I could not see, what if a water system says, I can't have my rate increase, okay, I'm just going to shut it down? Is there anything to protect the consumers that they have to leave it open or give so many notices before they can just shut down altogether?
There is not in this bill, but Madam Chair, I can assure you they're doing fine. They're not going to shut down.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have a small one in our community. It's not one that has, a small rural area, only a few homes on it. And if they just said, no, I'm not going to upgrade it or whatever, I just want to make sure nobody's left without any water.
Well, this piece of legislation only pertains to companies that use surface water.
Okay.
That your system may have a well and use well water, okay, but this bill only pertains to companies that get surface water for distribution, and they have 2,000 or more customers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Along those lines, just for the committee's information and my observation of this bill, it's very narrowed down bill. This is the first time the PSC in Georgia has been asked to regulate water systems. They do a great job with electricity, gas, telecommunications, those type of things. But water and our study committee really found it could be a huge job. And so I think Chairman Rhodes is trying to stick his toe in to start and see how this thing works, see where we are, see what those rates look like on a small number of systems. And I think that's what this bill is attempting to do. I don't want to take words out of your mouth.
I couldn't have said it better, Mr. Chairman.
But this is a first start for the PSC and those areas to see what the outcome, where we actually are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think it's a good bill. I think we do need the protection, but some of these little ones I was worried, but they're taken care of, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Representative Mathis.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Rhodes, I don't know much about private water systems. When a municipality they have fire plugs, they have fire hydrants and that sort of thing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do the private water companies have the same things in large neighborhoods that they provide water to and that sort of stuff?
Yes, sir, and a good portion of them they do, absolutely. If they're providing water for that subdivision or that, yes, they do.
It's just for my information. I'm just interested to know if you had a large fire in a residential area and these folks, you had to pump water to put these fires out, who is responsible for the cost of that water? under these private companies. I'm just asking this as a question. It is something that has come up to me before. Now, I know that this bill, may not be covered, and we're just trying to regulate these things and we got it down, but I thought it was something we need to think about in the future to make sure that these areas are protected, but who's responsible for the cost if that was to happen? And I hope that's a fair question.
And to my friend from Cochran, you stumped me. I don't have an answer for that. I'm going to have to find out.
Well, I'd like to
but it's a very good question.
I'd like to just make sure that, like Chairman talked about, want to make sure the customers protected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think you kind of answered the question, but I was a little concerned about the budget, the fiscal note. You said 750 to 1 million. Is
1.2.
1.2 million. Can you share with us where that is? Kind of not break it down and itemize it, but is that bulk of that it's going to be staffing, or is that going to be administration?
I can attempt to answer it, but the gentleman behind me can give you a more fully detailed answer. But from our talks, starting out, it could be 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4 to 5 people. That would take that up. And as far as the structure and the duties of those people, I would have to ask our gentleman from the PSC to fill in those blanks.
Okay, but that is the budget. The bulk of the budget is the staffing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Rhodes, for bringing this bill. And this time, I would entertain a motion on this bill if it's the will of the committee. Chairman Corbett has a motion to do pass. LC 550562S. Do I hear a second? Second. Any other discussion on this HB 449? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
members. Thank
Please
y'all for getting here early Monday morning.
Please get the proper paperwork signed and on to rules. Next on our agenda, I'd like to bring back HB 529. Representative Barrett, is he here? There he is. We had, this will be your third time back on this bill. Thank you for your patience. We had if you recall the committee, we had a committee substitute and inadvertently got the wrong substitute submitted to the clerk's office. And so we had to ask for the bill to come back out of Rules Committee, back to this committee, so that this committee would be in a position to pass the correct sub and getting back to Rules Committee. So that is why you're back. And no fault of yours, I don't think. It's just a lot of process up here, and we've got a great clerk, Bill Riley, that looks after all the details very closely. And so happy to do that this morning. I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to say anything else this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm just thrilled to be back. Hopefully third time is a charm. And this is just a good bill that is probably long overdue. We've all had automatic renewing subscriptions that we kind of got surprised about, and it essentially gives consumers the opportunity to opt in versus opting out, and shifts the burden back onto those vendors and off of the consumer. It just gives a little additional protection to consumers, and I think we've discussed the bill at length, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions at all. I have spoken to a lot of different trade associations about this, and I think we're all substantially on the same page. I think that there's always a tweak or two that people ask for, but great bill.
All right, thank you. And let's back up just a minute. I want to make sure we got the right sub, right bill we're looking at. In our folders is LC 550567S. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay. And that bill included, when our last trip here, we changed the date to on line 249, I believe, to December 31st, and that was the change that this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We do have someone signed up to talk on this bill. You let me know that, I think, and if they could be short, we would. Charles Reganati, would you like to come speak to this bill?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you go to the podium, Mike, and
Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay. Members of the committee, my name is Charles Rignanti. I represent the Health and Fitness Association, which advocates for the Georgia fitness industry. So I spoke to the author of the bill yesterday, and my industry supports the intent of this bill, but has concerns regarding the online cancellation requirement and the impact on month-to-month fitness facility contracts. So fitness facilities are not comparable to auto-renewing newspaper subscriptions or real estate investing software. They're essential to public health, and their business model depends heavily on month-to-month auto-renewals, which account for 70 to 80% of total revenue. Most Georgia fitness facilities operate on tight margins, about 10 to 15%, and rely on these predictable renewals to make critical decisions on hiring, equipment, maintenance, and operations. Under the current language of this bill, every month, facilities would have to ask members who initially chose to opt out of the automatic renewal provision whether they want to terminate altogether, renew for another month without an automatic renewal provision, or opt into a new contract with an automatic renewal provision. This language would significantly damage member experience, member fitness goal progression, and a facility's financial sustainability. Additionally, mandating a website or online cancellation method does go above and beyond the Biden administration's FTC click-to-cancel rule, which only requires email cancellation. For many small, independent facilities, they lack the resources to build and maintain website cancellation portals. I've actually added an amendment to this bill's written testimony to exempt our industry from these provisions to ensure that fitness facilities can continue to serve Georgia communities. And then I've also spoken with the author, who has been amenable to these changes, and will work with him going forward. Thank you for considering these adjustments.
okay, thank you for that testimony. Is there any questions from the committee? Chairman Jaspers.
Over here.
Sure
I just
thing.
gotta, I've just watched, since Representative Barrett brought this, I've kind of watched on TV the advertisement and such. I believe on everything I've seen that your industry is really going to a month by month.
Correct.
So how would this adversely affect that? I think it's really no subscription, you're just paying month by month. How does this negatively affect you?
So we are subject to the automatic renewal provision in this bill. Anything in this bill that says 1 month or more, or specifically 1 month, is subject to our industry. As the bill stands right now, there's a lot that is strict. It's a strike through, and then it says more than 1 month. And so anything that is a monthly subscription does apply to our industry. So I also talked with the author who's in favor of making this bill really pertain to annual memberships, and then memberships that are lasting more than years, kind of getting at locking in consumers for long periods of time.
Thank you.
Representative Barrett, can you speak to that, to the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Dan, the spirit of the bill is intended to, when you enter into an annual subscription, for example, on a newspaper, at the end of a year, when you say I'm subscribing for a year, usually that means a year. But when you go to subscribe, they say, give me your credit card, and oh, by the way, at the end of a year, it's going to renew automatically. And tough luck, the onus is on you, the consumer, to remember to go back and put that on your calendar and catch that. And I have a good example right here today of one that I just had renew the other day automatically, and I went to cancel it yesterday. And they said, okay, great, you're canceled, but now your subscription will be good for the next year because you're not getting your $100 back. That's a prime example and a real world example. So I've got many examples, and I know everybody on this committee does too. I spoke specifically to Legislative Counsel about the short-term contracts, those month-to-months. He said, this is not intended to do that. Now, Mr. Rignanti and I did talk yesterday, and I said the spirit of this bill is if you're going to make me sign up for an automatic renewal on a long-term contract, I want you to give us an option as well to say at the end of that term it's over. Because of the conversations with this committee in the last two meetings, we also agreed that it would be appropriate if a company is going to raise my pricing on even a short-term contract in a material fashion, they should have to notify me. But it's not enough just to notify me. You should also give me the opportunity to say, I agree and I'm okay with that. So that's sort of a second provision of this. As far as the language in the bill, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Rignanti. After speaking to Legislative Counsel, I did commit to him that on the Senate side, we would look at finding the appropriate person to carry the bill in the Senate and maybe tweak that language to bring additional clarity to that. Because if it is misinterpreted, the last thing on earth we want to do is, I couldn't be more pro-business, I don't think, as a former CEO of a bank. We don't want to create consternation unnecessarily. That's not the spirit of the bill. So we'll look at the language again as it moves to the Senate and maybe look at a tweak or two. But I'm very comfortable after working with Nick Tate and Legislative Counsel with the language that's in there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Got several more questions. Representative Cox, are you, your light's been blinking.
At the
Here, hold on. Here we go.
at the appropriate time, I'd like to.
We got a few more questions. Representative Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said Taylor? Oh, I guess it's a question for the gentleman that's testifying. How many other industries are going to want to be opted out of the law? And I guess that would be my concern is if we're starting with the fitness industry, what other industries that are doing the month-to-month renewals that will say, well, we want out as well?
I can speak to that a little bit. To the representative's point, right? I think there are a lot of industries that are affected by this, but there are certain ones that are, a lot worse than others, right? And he talked about newspaper subscriptions that will charge you like $100 the entire next year. You'll talk about. We talked about last night a real estate software subscription that will charge you an extra $500. Essentially, what the worst offenders in this space, they'll say your annual subscription is $500 to $100 for a service, and then you'll kind of forget about it, and then they'll charge you $200, $300, $500, right? And that's not exactly anything that we do in the fitness industry, right? We are.
Well, let's speak directly to your industry.
Sure,
I think the question is, you mentioned month to month. So how does this bill adversely affect month to month renewals on your industry? I think is what the committee is trying to get to.
So there's certain language that I'm concerned about in the bill that deals with month to month. Essentially just offers the consumer the option to have a service contract that would terminate at the end of a 30-day mark rather than be subject to an automatic renewal provision. That specific language is what is concerning us. simply because our entire business model is based off of the automatic renewal premise on a month-to-month basis. And so it would substantially affect our ability to continue to operate as operators in the state of Georgia.
Okay, Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one of our folks out in the audience wanted me to ask you, Representative Barrett, would this apply to like auto subscriptions that create charitable contributions that
Yes.
you might sign on that you're doing it over,
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
For the same exact reasons. You agree to give your favorite nonprofit $500 over a year, and it's going to be $40 whatever dollars per month. Your intent is to give for a year. If you continue on, if it automatically renews, which you may choose to do or maybe not, you may say, no, I intended to give the $500, and then I intended for it to stop. But if they set you up on auto renewal at the end of that year, when they have you continue on, they're going to have to notify you, and you're going to have to give your affirmative consent to do so.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a very high burden. I think if I'm going to ask you to give me your money, and beyond the initial term that you agreed to, I should have you say, yeah, I'm comfortable doing that. Yes, I'm sticking with it, and I'll keep giving my money.
Thank you.
Representative Osteen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the third time, I hope this one is a charm, I think that this bill is great because the purpose of this committee is consumer affairs. And I have been victim to this multiple times, and the burden of trying to get my money back or get it canceled is just exhausting. And it is past time that we pass some kind of legislation like this to stop people from, I did not consent for somebody to just charge my credit card or take money out of my debit account just at will. The purpose of the bill is at the end of the period, I can say, you know what, I still want to do this. Or you know what, I don't want to do it anymore. So that's the purpose of the bill, correct? Just for me to give consent.
That's exactly correct.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You know, you get, and to continue that, Mr. Chairman and Representative Osteen.
Well, thank you for that, for this bill. We're at a point now, I see no more questions. It's crossover week, and this committee's heard this bill 3 times. Had input. I think both of you have expressed willingness to work on the language. If it does need some tweaking over in the Senate, hopefully it'll get there. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to pass LC 550567S. Do I hear a motion? Got a motion. I hear a second. Any other questions for the author? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, bill passes again. Thank you, Representative, and be sure to get the proper signature from me, and we'll get it onto rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your patience. All right, those are our 2 bills that we just really had to. I relented, and we've had Chairman Saints has had a bill sitting in this committee for most of this session. He has been very busy working on this bill, talking to the Department of Ag, and very complicated. I've lots of things here, and I wanted our committee to hear a little bit about his concerns and what this bill is trying to do. It's a hearing-only bill this morning. We agreed to, so, but our this committee is very familiar with our hemp issues in our state, and the good and the bad around it. And so thank you, Representative, for bringing this. HB 265.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as a reflection of our conversations with multiple stakeholders, including the Department of Ag, there is a substitute that you should have in front of you, LC 550512S, which is a reflection of really restricting down to the cannabinoids that are the most known and the most utilized in this synthetic creation of a high product. As mentioned before multiple times in this committee, so I won't elaborate on the distinction, but again, marijuana is defined by the 2018 Farm Bill as something with 0.3% or more Delta 9. Hemp is described as anything as a cannabis plant with less than 0.3% of Delta 9. Delta 9 being the predominant psychoactive effect is what gets you high. Delta 8, it's very similar looking but less hardworking little brother, is also capable of getting you high. It's naturally created, but until it's synthetically created, which it can be through that hemp plant, through the CBD in that hemp plant, it can be synthetically created to produce a much larger high than that would occur naturally. That's what this is getting to, because the 2018 Farm Bill does not talk about Delta 8 or any of those synthetic derivatives other than the main naturally high component, which is Delta 9. This bill aims to eliminate Delta 8 in hemp products within the state of Georgia. I think you should have a yellow package from our friends at the Georgia for Responsible Marijuana Policy that have tried to kind of hone in on the Delta 8 issue and the synthetic highs that all the other synthetic components that can be utilized by the industry for an unintended consequence. But I'll leave it at that. I know there's a couple of folks who know more than me and on the components of this, but again, this is just to address a very similar psychoactive component that wasn't addressed in the definition of hemp.
Thank you for this information in this yellow packet. It does really talk about some good information concerning that. Are there any questions of the author? We do have some people wanting to speak to the bill, and we can, seeing no questions right for this moment, we'll come back for the committee. But I'd like to ask some Michael Murmur to come and speak. Georgia's for Responsible Marijuana Policy, I think.
Thank you, Chairman, Vicki, and representatives. Again, Michael Mumper, Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. We're a 501c4 nonprofit since 2017, aiming for responsible, safe marijuana policies. Representative Saines did a fantastic job at explaining the difference between hemp and marijuana. They are different plants. They're both part of the cannabis family. Hemp tends to be taller. Marijuana tends to be bushier and shorter. But the legal definition is that 0.3% level that Representative Saines talked about. Anything over 0.3 is marijuana, under is hemp. THC then and CBD are two of the compounds that make up both hemp and marijuana. They're the most well-known. THC is the psychoactive one that gets someone high. CBD does not get someone high unless it is synthetically driven, as Representative mentioned. It's important because when products get a certain level of THC, they can start to get the new user high. Just 10 milligrams can get a new user high. By comparison, the old joint back in the day would have about 100 milligrams of THC. So 10 milligrams is not a lot. Because the potency of marijuana is going up every year as botanists and scientists get more sophisticated in the way they grow it. And because of perceptions of harm of marijuana that are going down, more people are using it more regularly. It used to be that 1 out of 11 people who used marijuana could develop a cannabis use disorder, 1 in 11. These days, the most recent studies show that it's like 30%. 1 in 3 people who use marijuana products can develop a cannabis use disorder. So we have to be very wary of how available we're making THC, especially the high THC products. Now that's important because, as Chairman Saines mentioned, the Farm Bill addressed Delta 9 THC. That's the most well-known THC within marijuana, Delta 9, which is why it was specifically named in the Farm Bill. The problem, as we may know, is that it didn't name other cannabinoids within marijuana, like that either occur naturally or can be semi-synthetically derived, like Delta 8, like Delta 10, like Delta 6. There's many. So this meant that consumable hemp products could contain only 0.3% Delta 9 THC, which is legally hemp. But that same product could contain 95% Delta 8 THC, and it would get someone just as high as 95% Delta 9 THC. What does that look like? So for example, there is a smoke shop in Helen, Georgia called Alpine Dispensary. They're in Helen, Georgia. We know that's north of Atlanta. And they have a billboard in South Georgia. This is south of Warner Robins. I was driving from Tifton to Warner Robins, past this huge billboard with a marijuana leaf, Alpine Dispensary. Now, why would a smoke shop in North Georgia be advertising marijuana in South Georgia? And it's because Delta 8 is not regulated, hence legal, and you can order it online and have it shipped to you for free if you order at least $49 or $50 worth of product. And one vape cartridge of 95% THC, this is on their website this morning, I just looked this morning, 95% Delta 8 THC costs $60. So you can have this shipped to your home for free anywhere in Georgia. So that's why we would like to address Delta 8, to try to take some huge portion of high THC products off our shelves. Any questions? Otherwise, that's...
No, thank you. And the since the time, we got several other speakers for this bill. Thank you for being here. Next, Marty Ravinda, would you come and like to speak to the bill?
Good morning. Thank you for letting me be here today. So I'm a mom of a young man who is my heart outside of my body. He's a wonderful young man. We raised him in the church, and he was an AP student in high school. He played on the soccer team, very popular, had a lot of friends. He's a great young man. And I've had that comment many, many times up to this day. But what I'd like to share with you is in the fall of 2019, one of our family friends came to my front door and said, "Your son's getting high in the bathroom at school, smoking high potency THC." They didn't say high potency, smoking THC in the bathroom in high school. This is not too far after we had actually caught him getting high within our home. We set boundaries and all that stuff. It didn't matter. My son still got high in the bathroom. At that point, my husband and I realized that it was a problem for our son. So we very quickly put him into an intensive outpatient program. He participated in that program for about 6 weeks. He couldn't stay sober because he's addicted to high potency THC. We put him into an inpatient program for 45 days. He came home, thought he was fixed. He's fixed, right? By, this was in November, by Valentine's Day, he was getting high again. We had to And mind you, my son's 16 years old. And my husband and I had to tell him he couldn't live in our home anymore and continue to get high. That is the only boundary that we really could use. So he went and slept on a friend's sofa for about a week and said, I'm gonna get sober. I'm gonna stick with it. So he gave it another try. By middle of March, almost this time, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, he got kicked out of his intensive outpatient program because he couldn't stay sober. He couldn't stay away from the high potency THC. That was the point where my husband and I said, I'm sorry, it gets me upset every time. You can't live here anymore. He's barely 17 years old. But he couldn't stay sober, and we were out of resources. And we said, here's your option. You can go to an intensive inpatient program, or you can I got a bag of clothes for you, and you can go figure it out. I'm a fortunate mom. My son made the decision to go into an inpatient program. On March 13th, my son will celebrate 5 years of sobriety. But that doesn't mean that he's fixed. He will always want to get high. And that the availability of high potency THC, and I can't stand up here and debate with you whether it was Delta 8 or what strain it is. It's high potency THC, that it's killing our youth. So out of my passion of being a sponsor and a mentor to other parents with young people who are challenged with substance use disorder, and on behalf of my son, who is now a substance use counselor, we ask you to pass this, to have some form of restrictions on high potency THC. If not on a daily, on at least a weekly basis, as a parent coach and a mentor to other parents who are challenged with youth, as young as 12 years old, who are coming through programs seeking help to get their children off high potency THC and help them find sobriety. I'm here to ask that you please pass this bill to save our future generations from being mentally incapacitated because of or just damaging their lives in general by using these products. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come here, and I think this committee's heard your passion and your thoughts on this bill. Thank you very much for being here this early morning for that. We do have a couple more speakers. Greg Redonda, if you'd like, and we're on a very short time schedule. We've got other committees after this one. If you could limit it to a couple minutes, would be best.
I'm Dr. Greg Reduca. I'm the Vice President with Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. For the last 50 years, I've been involved with substance abuse prevention and treatment, so I've heard many, many stories over those years, just like Ms. Rivedos. And lately, more and more stories about Delta 8 products, which proliferate vape stores, convenience stores. It's all over the place. So very important legislation, and we thank Representative Saines so much for offering this legislation. And Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you so much for taking time to hear us today. That's greatly appreciated. I have a ABCs of THC in your packet because I know this can be complex stuff, chemistry, biology, and so forth. So this was very helpful to me, actually, making this handout for you because I realized how much it's been needed. So I won't belabor some of the pieces in this that have already been explained to you, But THC and CBD are the two cannabinoids we know the most about because they make the most news. And they affect the nervous system. THC gets you high and sometimes addicted. CBD doesn't. CBD can be medicine for epileptic children, for example, which has been great. The 10 milligrams to the point that been made can get the new user high, just 10 milligrams. That's not very much. That's the amount that can be in one gummy. Hemp happens to be loaded with CBD, the good stuff. The problem is that per the chemical structure on your handout, even though they don't sound very alike, they have completely different names, CBD, THC, they are very similar chemically in structure. And so it's very easy for someone to go in and synthetically take CBD and make it into THC. And many different kinds of synthetic THC. And Delta 9 is just one of those kinds. So if we only limit Delta 9, then we're not doing anything with the other kinds of THC like Delta 8.
Can I stop you right there? Let's speak to that. If we prohibit Delta 8, there's lots of other options out there for these folks to go to. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We felt like Delta 8 could be a starting point, hopefully, because on the bottom of your sheet, you'll see various other kinds of synthetic THC, which can be made from CBD and are being marketed. And some of these are being marketed as 30 times more powerful than Delta 9. So what that would do to children, I have no idea. Well, I do have an idea because it affects brain development and other things like that. So the kids are really where I'm coming from. I'm a volunteer at this point because I've retired. And so it's just so important for the well-being of Georgia's children in particular that this bill be passed. I could conclude with something from 20 states have closed the Delta loophole, as it's called, that allows the products with Delta 8 in them. Chris Carr signed on to a letter from 20 states' attorneys general to try and get Congress to close the loophole. And just a sentence or two, that hemp-derived intoxicants like Delta 8 have proliferated across our states, posing a significant threat to public health and safety, benefiting...
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're out of time. I've got a couple more speakers that need to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Catherine Russell, Department of Ag. I think our commissioner's unavailable. Catherine is, I've first met Catherine, I think, at a study committee on hemp 3 or 4 years ago. She knows a lot about this hot topic, and she is counsel for the Department of Ag. Many of you know her, and I just want to ask Catherine, if you can, this morning, to kind of update the committee on what the department is doing as far as this committee, I think, passed legislation through last year to give the commission authority to regulate a lot of these products and businesses that sell them, and just maybe give us an update on where the department is on that and the posture that we're in right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. Catherine Russell, Director of Policy at the Department of Agriculture. Last year, the legislature passed SB 494, which allowed us to have, I'm sorry, do y'all hear an echo? Okay. Is that better? Okay. So last year, the legislature passed SB 494, which gave us regulatory authority to oversee the hemp industry in the retail, wholesale, and manufacturing markets. And so we've been working on that. As the commissioner mentioned to you when he came and visited earlier this session, we actually went through 2 rounds of rulemaking to go ahead and build out the program. We've hired post-certified officers and civilian inspectors and have started rolling all of those inspections out. Our most recent set of rules actually went into effect the first week of January. So we were not fully running things until about a month ago, right? So what we're expecting to see, well, I'm sorry, let me back that up a little bit. So with our consumer safety bill last year, we already knew where we were with D9 and what was expected, Delta 9. We did not push with that bill any changed or new policy concerning other cannabinoids or isomers, because at that point we felt like it was a policy decision that really needed to be weighed by the legislature. I know that the terminology is to call it a loophole. I actually don't think it's a loophole. I think that it's a policy that has not yet been considered by the legislature. It's a very important policy, and we would like direction on it. However, one of the big concerns that we have right now, before our big concern, there are products on the shelves that are marketed as D8 and Delta 10 products. And as we go and test, we're expecting a lot of those actually to be Delta 9 products. It's much more abundant, it's cheaper, it's more effective. And so we're finding that when we do test, we're finding lots of Delta 9 products that are being marketed as something else. So we're anticipating seeing much lesser sales moving forward. One of the concerns that we have, oftentimes things appear to be a simple problem or a simple concern, and there's a simple solution. And I would submit to you that this is one of those situations that appears that way. However, I believe it's a much more complex problem, and the ramifications for handling it without taking due consideration of how it's going to affect the consumers long term, I think it's something that we really need to probably consider. So if you were to look at what's available now, you've got your D9, which we know where we stand on that. You've got D8, which can be naturally occurring and is less potent than D9. You've also got THCP, which is really, really potent. You've got HHC that doesn't occur on its own. You have to actually make that by running it across a metal column. You do a profile on those, they all have spikes for heavy metals, and people are vaping these, right? So when we look at the situation, we think that it's important to have a comprehensive understanding of what is available and not pick at some pieces that are easy to identify and arguably less potent, therefore pushing consumers further to the fringe to more, because the minute that you say HHC is illegal, well, they're going to go make something else in 10 or 14 days and it'll be on the market. And we have no idea what that is. And we know that there are spikes that show up on those profile tests that people are ingesting, and we don't know what they are. So we have not yet had the opportunity to really dig into this problem the way that we would like to. And I also think it's important, I say problem, I think it's important to identify when you're looking at what's an intoxicating cannabinoid. Well, some people may list CBD or CBN, which is not anywhere near the same thing as THCP. So I've had some conversations with our lab, local lab here in Georgia, and learned a bunch of really interesting information from some of the folks that work there, particularly about how our C1 receptors in our brains receive the intoxicating products, how some of them may be mitigated if you also have CBD in any of the product that you're ingesting. And this is a lot more complex than it may appear to be. So I would just submit to you that we think that it would be more responsible for our consuming public to pause, figure out what we're dealing with, really target it in a way that's comprehensive and achieves the goals that we set out to achieve, rather than having to come year after year creating a list and potentially push the consuming public into consuming things that are they're further derived, they're further synthetically altered, and potentially more dangerous.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. It is 9 o'clock, and I appreciate the author bringing this to our attention. It is a problem, and I'm open to trying to find solutions for this. I think everybody is. If there's no other business, I would adjourn this meeting. Thank you.